All right, well, dark times, so let's fiddle while Rome burns. Welcome back to Ground Zero Salem. As always, I'm your host, Pat. So, as I stated a few updates back, let's talk about recommendations on this update. Before I get into that, if you haven't noticed, the short didn't get to you, if you didn't see me posting on social media, if you did not see the video, full 8-minute music video, visual collage of carnage that I put up last week for my friend's band, my friend's project, Time Under Earth, of which I've released the tape. This is the latest release on my cassette-only label, GZS Physical Media. I have revived that. The distro is still on ice. I do not have time for that right now. Who knows, I might get back to that at some point in the future. However, I'm still releasing tapes. I'm still putting out stuff by my friends. This is the first tape on the label that isn't a reissue of a classic old Syracuse demo. This is a classic new recording, really. It's more of a professional EP. This features Matt Kinney, good friend of mine, one of my oldest friends, on bass and a bunch of other instruments, vocals, guitar, some electronics and stuff. And Graham, who is the guitarist from Ed Gein. Did I say it? You're never supposed to pronounce it Ed Gein. It's Ed Gein. Grind band from Syracuse, New York, put out a lot of good stuff over the years. Graham and Matt, their project, as I stated, I don't want to be too repetitive here, but it's kind of forward-thinking doom death stuff. I feel like a lot of the tone and spirit is very based in the 90s still. But it has certain elements of like weirdness from that era. I know Matt was talking about being really into Pandemonium and Unholy. It doesn't sound directly like anybody, really, but you can tell it's inspired by certain things. And there's industrial elements on it here and there, and touches some sort of more mechanical kind of rhythms. So Godflesh, I'd say, is a significant influence in that regard. Maybe some Neurosis. There's some interesting stuff. Keith Allen, who is the vocalist for Architect and Found Dead Hanging, and I think he was the vocalist for Ghost Ship, the straight edge band. He does guest vocals on the second track. It is one epic 8-minute song and then a 5-minute song. They're both very, very engaging. They keep you listening despite the length. I'm excited to have released this. Comes on a blue shell there, and it's got a full color fold out. I'd say this feels very, industrial death, kind of the way it's kind of just laid out in blocks like that. I'm happy the way that turned out. So plenty of copies available. There's a Bandcamp link down there. Please check it out. In other news, Metallurgy is every Friday, as you know, the Heavy Metallurgy channel. If you haven't checked that out, it's always an excellent roundtable where a bunch of people like to sit around and talk about subjects related to metal. I'm going to be joining once again. I think this is the 4th or 5th time I'm going on. Alan and Marty, as usual, will be hosting, and Melanie Loves Death Metal will also be on, so I'm really excited for that. I don't think I've talked to Melanie since I had her on the channel a while ago when I was doing the Mondays streaming stuff, so that's really cool. The subject is we're going to be talking about whether the first records we heard by a band were our favorites, because often that is the case, and that's a really creative topic. I thought that was pretty cool. I'll give you an example, and I'll give away a little teaser here. My favorite Anthrax is definitely Fistful of Metal. It's kind of fluctuated. It didn't start that as my favorite album by them. It was when I heard it. It was the only one I could get a hold of. For years, it was Among the Living, and then I burnt out on that. For a long time, it was Persistence of Time, because that was the one that was big when I started getting into music. But these days, the one that I always reach for is Fistful of Metal, because it's got a little bit more of that classic sort of US power metal kind of grit to it. The only one with Neil Turbin. I was going to say Armed and Dangerous, but Belladonna came on for that one. Memory slipping. The only one with Neil Turbin. I really like his vocal performance on that. I like how it's still halfway rooted in classic, heavy metal like Judas Priest kind of stuff. So yeah, there's an example for you there. It's going to go along those lines. They gave me a list of bands like this, and I think I have all the releases, which is, I mean, there's no surprise there. I'm a hoarder. So that's happening on Friday. I'm trying to get this video out on Thursday by my usual schedule that I've kind of held myself to, or trying to. This might not come out to the weekend, so if not, strike that, but it should today. I think I'll maybe cut a few corners with editing. Okay, so let's get into recommendations. So I came back to the YouTube sphere, you know, whatever that was, a couple months ago, and I started posting about stuff I'd been listening to during the interim. You know, I've been on a huge doom kick, and I've been on a huge prog and krautrock kick, and along the usual, you know, raw death metal, raw hardcore kind of stuff. So my friends, confidants, viewers, supporters, well-wishers started responding via comments. I got a nice email from a viewer. Old friends that always recommend me stuff chirped in, telling me to check out certain things and helping me along my musical journey. So I have mostly CDs here. As I mentioned a few updates back, Aaron the Metal Theologian, always great with recommending music. He made a whole video where he just talked about, for lack of a better term, krautrock. I checked out a few things on vinyl that I already showed off, that Operation LP and a few other things. So now I've got some CDs. So this will be all CDs, you know, not as fun to show off as records, but easier because I don't have to, you know, just do that. All right, so let me just pull up. I screenshotted everything for editing later, but Decroc Paul, 1 month ago. Awesome to have you back. Always dig your videos and recommendations. Thank you. If you dig the Groundhogs, be sure to check out Black Diamond and Crosscut Saw. Both excellent albums. Well, as it happens, I found a copy of both on the same CD. Groundhogs, you know, it's been kind of a journey with them. I heard the name and bought, is it Blues Funeral? I think it's called A Blues Funeral. It's something along those lines. I bought their, I don't know if it's their first album, but it's their last album they did as like sort of almost a purely blues, a British blues rock kind of band. After that, Thank Christ for the Bomb comes along. That's way more like proto-punk, elements of folk, like kind of garage rock. Really, really good. You know, big for fans of Dead Moon or something like that. They were an influence on The Damned. Like that record a lot. Going to spend a lot more time with it over the years. So these are some subsequent recordings, and I'm not sure where they are in the lineup there. I think they're a few albums along from Thank Christ for the Bomb, but I could be wrong. This is a 2-on-1 CD, as I already mentioned. And it's good. It's more the Groundhogs. It's not quite as emotionally impactful for me as Thank Christ for the Bomb. Seems to be a little bit more of a plateau of rock, a plateau of rocking out. But it is more of that great sort of almost kind of proto-punk 70s hard rock kind of thing going on with it. Very, you know, kind of British in its own way. That's hard to describe right now. But yeah, excellent stuff. And then I'm just kind of going around from screenshot to screenshot here. 2011 was pretty solid. The Wretch, Boldly Stride the Doom, and Atma. The Wretch being Gates of Slumber. Atma being, I want to say it was Thou or Yob. It was one of the monosyllabic newer doom bands. I believe it was Yob, who I'm just starting to kind of explore. Boldly Stride the Doomed by Argus. Also, Devin, Maze of Torment, recommended this. It's pretty cool. It doesn't really scream doom to me. I mean, it's definitely the type of traditional metal that a lot of people into doom would like. Very gallopy, you know, kind of gritty US power metal, which is a big difference between the German stuff, you know. Seems very inspired by Dio era Sabbath and Manila Road and the like. But I don't know, I'm not getting straight up doom metal. There's certain elements of it that are kind of doomy when they slow down. Regardless, awesome band. Really, really good American band. They're on Cruz del Sur, which I think is an Italian label. And they're from the Midwest, I think. An Italian label, so maybe that's why. I mean, it was a little bit difficult getting. I got this in another CD of theirs. It's a little bit difficult getting a hold of this stuff, like for a reasonable price. I shelled out a few extra bucks, so that might be why. Maybe, I don't know. My finger wasn't on the pulse of doom really in 2011. I was too busy with school at the time, but I was not really aware of this band. So, at any rate, thanks for the recommendation. Great metal. longtime supporter Ben NG, who I just met IRL in Maine, always recommends stuff to me. Let me just pull up his screenshot here. Double header here. Melvin's is rad, Bullhead is really heavy. Check out Gloomy Reflections if you haven't. I think you'd dig them. Will do. Wyatt, ex-him, famous YouTuber. I second for you to get into Gloomy Reflections. And I saw that Wyatt was posting stuff about Gloomy Reflections and Steroid, and I didn't clip it, but there's another comment, I believe, where Ben recommends Steroid on a later video, I think one of my more recent videos. So yeah, I got both of these. Gloomy Reflections is from Australia. I do believe Steroid is as well. Kind of an interesting approach to metal that, you know, has been kind of touched upon in the past, you know, maybe in the mid 80s. I mean, Turbo by Judas Priest, and there's probably a few outlier examples, but Gloomy Reflections and Steroid both kind of lean into like, kind of, I don't want to say cheap, but very, very vintage retro sounding kind of synths that give this sort of a weird, I know that these guys mostly are involved in dungeon synth stuff, and this is them fleshing that out into like more of an actual straight up metal band, but it's got that early 80s kind of tang to it, and it has sort of a weird synth pop or soundtracky kind of undertone. Vocally, it reminds me of In Solitude a little bit of like the first two In Solitude records before Sister. It's got that kind of sort of tone to the vocals, and it has that sort of melodic approach, but there's the synth work is heavy and feels weirdly almost kind of like new wavy a little bit to me, which is cool. I've never really heard that in metal yet, other than, you know, Turbo, which kind of is maligned, but I think is being rediscovered and reappraised, which is fairly so, in my opinion, because that's a good record. And then we have Steroid, Chainmail Commandos. This leans way more into some kind of almost sort of new wave sort of thing. I heard the term egg punk a lot. I haven't really thought of that term in a while. That was a big meme, Jesus, almost 10 years ago, I want to say. The whole egg punk versus chain punk thing, wherein DIY, hardcore, and punk, there was a strain of stuff coming out that was like really gnarly and early 80s hardcore-ish. And that was one thing that was really prevalent. And then there was a sort of Devo scene that had, the kind of cheap sounding synths and stuff like that. I never really got into quote unquote egg punk that much, except for one band called the Bougie Boys from Canada, who were really good. Obvious nod to Devo there, that kind of thing. But this is weird. I mean, this is really interesting. The vocals are a little pitch shifted. She sounds like she's singing like higher than she is. It's a little, I put it on in the car not that long ago when we were driving somewhere. My wife thought that it was on the wrong speed. It's an MP3 on the wrong speed. So it's got this oddly, like weirdly sort of cartoonish sort of vibe to it. Again, like heavy on the synthy keyboards, even heavier than Gloomy Reflections. And but it's really catchy. Like, you can't get the songs out of your head. It's really cool. I dig this a lot. I liked it so much that I saw that Sorry State was selling it on vinyl. It got reissued. The vinyl had sold out a while ago, so I got that. I got that as well. This came out on Nasubi Heavy Manufacturing Concern. CD has bonus tracks, so, you know, that's cool. And I don't remember what video it was on, or maybe he just texted me, but Ben and G recommended Theologian to me. This came out on Profound Lore. All Under Heaven is the title of this CD, Theologian. He stated it was very kind of peaceful, and I've been in the mood. You know, I try not to be a slave to seasonal listening, you know, and be like, oh, I gotta bust out the Mayhem and the Dark Throne when it gets cold out. It seems really basic ass to me, but as autumn is approaching, I have been craving stuff that sounds like early My Dying Bride and Paradise Lost. I cannot deny that. And I've been checking out some other stuff that's sort of along those lines, like that band Mother of Graves. This is very Peaceville-esque, but it's not a clone. It seems to be in the spirit of Peaceville stuff, but it's not doing a carbon copy of anything. There are clean vocals and growls. The clean vocals remind me of Ian Astbury from the Cult. which is a cool thing. It's sort of got that kind of goth croon to it. Feels very Yorkshire, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's there's something about it that, and I mean, that's, I think, what a lot of the OG Peaceville bands were kind of inspired by sometimes too. So maybe that's appropriate, but they seem to be interpreting it in a different kind of way. And it's certainly got that vibe, but again, I think they're doing something kind of original, which is cool. The vocal style, but yeah, very gloomy, heavy, doom death kind of stuff, but with a lot of variety and texture to it, which is great. Let's see what else we got here. Both Early Moods albums totally kill. Definitely from the early Trouble camp. Hell yeah, hell yeah. I got their EP. I got the self-titled, and it's not in front of me. It's in the racks behind me. I just got the other LP I ordered from Riding Easy last week. All this stuff is awesome. Very, very good. I can definitely hear the Trouble thing for sure. It has a really like throbbing heavy guitar tone. Seems equally rooted in the early 80s, kind of new at the time metal, right before thrash, new wave of British heavy metal, stuff coming out in the States at the time, but also plenty of like heavy 70s influence, maybe some Zeppelin or something like that. This dude's afro is incredible. It's screaming, it's giving MC5 to me, which I really appreciate. Yeah, super catchy. I wouldn't say the guy's like doing an Eric Wagner thing either. He's definitely got his own personality. He's certainly inspired by him and Ozzy, and probably a few others. But yeah, just, I love it when the gloom and the doom is paced with like mid-period chugging and galloping and stuff like that. That's why I love the early Trouble catalog so much. And it definitely honors that really well. Also mentioned was Riding Easy. If you haven't already, the Stranger 3530 says, if you haven't already, check out the Riding Easy label. Some of the bands may come off as throwback for throwback's sake, but there's some gems in there for sure. I could even say that it qualifies for the Boogie Doom moniker, Boogie Doom Productions. And then he mentions Ahab. I still haven't, I ordered an Ahab CD because I tend to like to start with the band's first release of their catalog. One of those scenarios where I ordered from Slamazon.com, and I don't know if it's everything going on with tariffs and importing stuff, but there's been numerous times I've tried to order stuff from like British companies, and it just never shows up, and I just get refunded if it's coming from overseas. So I still haven't dug into Ahab yet, but I have been checking out Riding Easy stuff without really making the connection. Like sometimes I don't register what labels I'm supporting for a little while, and I was like, oh yeah, I got this Magic Potion, and I love RIP. I've been checking them out since around the winter. This is the last thing they did, Dead End. This came out in 2020, so I don't know if they're still active. They are from, I want to say, the Pacific Northwest. Magic Potion, I didn't research where they're from. I think they're European. They certainly look and sound like it, but this is very much like 70s era Pentagram and Witchcraft and stuff like that, like very light, a lot of folky elements, but still kind of, you know, evil, doomy, metallic stuff going on with it. Really like that. And this just kills. It's like mean urban doom metal. And this is their third release, and each subsequent release gets a little bit more aggro. There's a lot on this, like if you like the Trouble self-titled, with the kind of faster numbers on that, I would certainly recommend it. Or, you know, St. Vitus when they go a little bit faster, like Hollow's Victim. You know, it's gloomy and it's got some slow, heavy parts, but especially songs like Judgment Night, it has this like pound to it that almost, I'm like, this is a fucking Cro-Mag song. This rules. This is so good. So yeah, RIP, strongly recommended on the Riding Easy label. I know I probably have a few more Riding Easy releases, but I'm starting to scour the label. There's a lot on that label. I don't know if you can see it behind me. Right there, a band called Hog. I got their LP with the other Early Moods. So I've been really delving in with that label. It's definitely everything I want in my life right now. Also, I've been wearing bell bottoms, so that makes sense. All right, Ben Brain Smasher recommended this to me. Valhall, perfect idea for a video. I will reference this often when the mood strikes me. you talking about Doom. I was so amped when you told me you grabbed a copy of that Valhall CD. Yeah, I really like this. This was not cheap. This is an original pressing on Head Not Found, a doom metal band on Head Not Found. I didn't know. Leave it up to Mr. Benjamin J. Smasher to pull out all the stops and find something that came out on a prominent black metal label back in the day that's like traditional doom. And I could be wrong, and the internet could be wrong, certainly, but I looked on the archives to see if any of these guys had played in any other type of bands, like if this was a doom metal side project or something. And it looks like this is the only band they played in. And it's just, I mean, it's, if you love traditional doom, if you love your St. Vituses and Troubles and all that stuff, Pentagram, all that, you will like this. But it does kind of fall into the trap a little bit of certain bands like Stillborn and some others, maybe some of the bands that were on Hellhound. Like, it is really difficult to sing like a howling prophet in the wilderness over slow doom if you're a little pitchy. You know, it's tough sometimes. And even the classic guys who did it, you know, the guys that paved the way for everybody else, like Scott Rieger's wasn't perfect. It's all about the vibe and mood. But I'm just saying, you're not going to get like a picture perfect example of a doom vocalist with this. The vocals are a little bit of an acquired taste. Not off-putting, not bad by any stretch of the imagination. I'm saying all this wearing a Serathon Gold shirt. But, you know, they're not going to be like any of the Count Raven guys or stuff like that, or Wino. You know, there's a little bit of like weirdness to the vocals. But that being said, it's excellent. Musically, it's excellent, kind of mid-paced to slower doom metal stuff that's got a little bit of a rocking vibe to it. So very good. And then there's a bunch of stuff that Aaron, the Metal Theologian, recommended in his video that I already mentioned and talked about, but I talked about LPs. This is CD stuff. I'll put a link in the description to that as well. It was just a complete seminar of like awesome German prog and hard rock and stuff. I've been over this already, but if you're new here, I did think he made an excellent point with just like it being a reductive term, a reductive genre name, krautrock, because I've come across some krautrock stuff that's like proto-heavy metal, and I've come across some krautrock stuff that's just bleeps and bloops. It's barely even any song structure whatsoever. So just it being from Germany and loosely related to prog rock somehow is reductive. For instance, Geronimo. This band is awesome, and it's way more along the lines of something like Mountain, or I don't know, Sir Lord Baltimore. You know, that kind of real heavy hard rock kind of stuff. It's really, really good. Out of this entire pile, this is probably the one I've listened to the most over and over again. Probably given it like a couple dozen spins. Super catchy, excellent, just hard rock, reaching towards like a proto-heavy metal kind of thing. And then Aaron held up the first album of this. This is another 2-on-1. This is Third World War. And how can I say no to a band called Third World War, you know? And this again is like, when did this come out? I feel like this belongs next to certain anomalies. I mean, there's proto-punk, of course, you know, MC5 and the Stooges, stuff that was punk before punk, that was a certain type of hard rock or whatever. And then you hear stuff like just a couple songs from a band like the Colored Balls from Australia, who had a song that was like a hyper fast Chuck Berry kind of riff, and doing something that, I don't know, the Damned and the Pistols did like just a few years later. And it's only like one song. I think it's called Can I Change Your Mind or Won't You Change Your Mind? I don't remember, but stuff like that that's like so close to being punk before it officially started. I feel like there's a bit of this on here. It's more kind of garagey kind of stuff, but it's got a lot more attitude and a lot less groove and chill vibes than a lot of like progressive or even proto-metal kind of counterparts, you know? Like it's very kind of garagey and crunchy and in your face. So that's great. I mean, it's called Third World War, you know? It lives up to the name. And then one that's like, this is one of those that I would have been like maybe bored surfing eBay or something, or surfing YouTube, checking out whatever. and been like, ooh, it's a prog band from the 70s called Nosferatu. It's like when I found out that there was a prog band called Shub Nagurov. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna buy that because it's the name of, you know, a Lovecraft monster. And it's like it's weird, but it's relatively like kind of mellow, out there prog stuff. Nosferatu, kind of the same deal. Weird, like I believe Aaron said that it's kind of an acquired taste. You have to give it a bunch of listens to sink in. It does get kind of heavy in its own way. There's some very prevalent saxophone on this, so you know, if you like that sort of King Crimson sort of vibe with the saxophone, I would say you wouldn't be disappointed by this. This is a cool German 70s band. I dig this. Then a few inadvertent recommendations from my friend Mike over at Analog Attack. On the Doom video, I talked about Pagan Altar, rightfully so, and he mentioned the new release with Brendan Radigan on vocals is excellent. I was not aware that he had recorded anything. This is still pretty new. I think it's only about, it came out this year, 6 months ago, something like that. So I was out of the loop. I hadn't heard. You know, I've been tracking Brendan's progress as a vocalist since his beginnings in X-Files X, going from kind of a just scratchy, yelled kind of hardcore vocals, almost kind of power violence style, to doing a more melodic approach with the Lovely Lads, and then eventually coming into his own as a metal vocalist, full-on metal vocalist in Magic Circle, while still doing some hardcore projects and stuff. Talented guy. Can't think of anybody better to take Terry Jones' place. Does a very, very good job of honoring his vocal style. Brendan certainly has his own voice, and I think this is very akin to the guy from Count Raven, Linderson there, taking over for Wino and St. Vitus and kind of doing his style, but not completely ripping them off, just kind of honoring it. And I think that's a very good comparison. You know, it's very much the same thing. Takes a lot of Terry Jones kind of inflections and does his own thing with it. Production's great. It's classic, solid Pagan Altar. As far as I know, it was recorded, or it was written before Terry Jones' death, or a lot of it was. So it's got that great triumphant kind of doom that they really nailed and came back to do after being around in the early 80s, you know, coming back in the 90s and kicking a lot of butt before Terry Jones sadly left us. So good work on that one. Great record. I think I like it even more than the last one, if that's not being too blasphemous. And I also was on an episode of What Are You Listening To? I'm just making the rounds, you know, of all the roundtable discussions. And I was aware of this, but the conversation with Mike was a reminder that I needed to pick this up. I had every intention of getting this anyway, but technically I'm going to sneak it in under recommendations. This is Deathside, The Will Never Die. Classic Japanese hardcore stuff, featuring Chelsea, who would go on to be the chief songwriter and guitarist for Paintbox, who I've talked about recently. And it's a compilation. It's 2 CDs, combining compilation tracks, Eye of the Thrash Gorilla LP, classic LP there, comp, Game of Death comp, Hang the Sucker comp. So a lot of comp stuff. Splits, the split with Chaos UK, also Legendary, some 7 inches. It's one of those, and I love compilations like this. Everything Deathside has done has been really impressive. The earlier stuff on this is a lot more raw, but even so, if you listen to what the bass is doing and the guitar, it sounds kind of like a huge mess at first, and then you can sort of pick out like, oh man, they're really shredding that and just going full throttle, you know? They're completely in the red, just going nuts on whatever instrument it is. You know, they're all just going crazy, which is great. And then as the CDs progress in time, you hear more of that kind of Blazing Spirits, like metallic thing coming on with like crazy molten leads and everything like that. But yeah, I mean, Deathside, raging Japanese, hardcore, real fast stuff. Awesome. So I also got an email from a viewer who's recommended stuff to me before. I'm not sure if he wants to remain anonymous. I'm just going to respect that regardless. You know, I'm sure it's probably not a big deal to name the guy, but just to be chill with it, I'm not gonna dox him. But he legit sent me several like text documents and lists of prog stuff. I gotta email him back actually. I meant to respond, and now I'm like shooting this, and I'm like, oh yeah, I gotta pitch it back, because he was talking about how the crust band Contra Praeter was actually very like kind of prog influenced, and like, yeah, they are. I never thought of it in those terms, but that totally makes sense. Yeah, a band that I believe was kind of an influence on Nausea from New York, that gets real like weird and like trippy at certain points after they're, you know, doing discharge riffs and kind of growly vocals and everything. At any rate, he gave me a couple of lists, stuff to check out. A few of these overlapped with, or one of these at least overlapped with Aaron's recommendations. So Attila, this is Spanish prog, and I mean, again, another 2-on-1. God, my Spanish. Intención and Reviewer. Sorry. Two of their albums on one CD there. The first one, Intención, I was walking the dog listening to that record, and it's got like so much in the first 15, 20 minutes, mostly the first song. There's the kind of like layered choral chanting in the beginning. There's fuzzed out heavy-ish kind of guitars. At a certain point, it lapses into the synthy, like Star Wars space laser noises. It's awesome. It's awesome. It really takes you on a journey. The kind of like, you know, kind of croony, sort of maybe a little bit gruff, like vocals in Spanish sound really, really good. Awesome. I really like this a lot. Agitation Free. Aaron showed this off on vinyl, so that was recommended. It was also recommended by this viewer in that email. I got their first two, Melesh and Second. I do like Second more than Melesh, but they're both excellent. I believe Aaron also recommended the third one. I'll have to track that down. But yeah, I mean, very kind of mind-expanding prog / psych. I think that's another thing Aaron said, was that it's kind of psychedelic, and it does get spacey and weird enough. I'd say it probably crosses into that territory, but there's plenty of bleed over everywhere for both of those genres regardless. But yeah, it's not a lot in the way of vocals. Like, it's mostly instrumental. If I remember right, there's some vocals, but it's just like kind of weird poetry through some sort of voice filter, like a la Hawkwind kind of stuff. And a lot of like odd kind of jamming, some cool like flute and stuff like that. Very cool. Multiple kind of, you know, influences from all over the world, music influence wise. So a lot of different styles of music kind of woven into progressive rock there. And then we got Between and The Waters Opened. I believe my friend who emailed said that this is one of the most beautiful records he heard. And I'd say that's right. This was a German band. And again, you've got all kinds of different influences kind of showing their beautiful little faces. I was going to say rearing their ugly heads, but it's not ugly. Lots of different musical influence, including Indian, including like some medieval European stuff going in there. Occasionally getting a little electronic, if I'm remembering right. And again, with the weird kind of poetry and stuff like that, but just really soothing, pretty, like prog rock stuff. Very, very, very cool. And then I had this actually downloaded and didn't really listen to it much, but I'm glad I picked this up because I know that this is kind of a cult classic. Brain Ticket, again, recommended by the email guy, the mysterious email guy. And this is, it feels a little bit more like Bad Acid Trip, like Freak Out a little bit. I think these guys are British. It has more of the kind of weird Dalek kind of vocals, you know, like Hawkwind had, like the odd sort of poetry and talking and stuff like that. A little bit heavier, a little bit more like oddly kind of crushing and atmospheric. And speaking of which, homeboy, the last thing he recommended, I thought he was recommending the Earth record, Teeth of the Lions Rule the Divine. And then I eventually figured out from the wording in his email, he was recommending the band, who I was not aware of. I'm aware of the Earth record, it's great. But I somehow missed, I mean, I'm a huge Cathedral fan, obviously, big Lee Dorian stan over here, especially recently. And I didn't know about this project, so I'm glad somebody hit me to it. It's Justin Greaves from Iron Monkey, Greg Anderson, and Stephen O'Malley from Con 8 and Son and Goat Snake and everything. and then Lee Dorian on vocals. And the first song is three songs, I want to say. First song is 29 minutes long, so you know what you're getting there. But I mean, it's weird because I haven't heard Lee get this heavy and like dark sounding vocally since Forest of Equilibrium. Like, he's really going for it on this. And I've seen in interviews with that guy, you know, different Cathedral interviews and bonus features on some of the CDs and everything like that. Like, oh yeah, like I love the really slow crushing stuff. Like, I always kind of got outvoted in Cathedral to do the more upbeat, you know, kind of goofy hippie trip out kind of stuff, which I thought was interesting. I mean, I would have thought that he would be the main mastermind behind pushing Cathedral in that direction, but I guess I could be wrong. Or maybe he did and he was burnt out on it. But regardless, this is just like, yeah, what you'd expect from the Southern Lord guys and Lee Dorian together and a guy from Iron Monkey. It's just punishingly heavy. It doesn't get too drone though. That's kind of the nice thing, is it, despite the fact that it's a half an hour long song, it kind of carries it along. But yeah, insanely abrasive, just detuned down into the center of the Earth's core. Heavy, heavy, heavy stuff. So yeah, that's all of the recommendations. I love recommendations, keep them coming. If by any chance you recommended something and I missed it, I'm sorry. You know, I will try to get back on that. Let me know in the comments, I guess. And yeah, that's about it. I'll probably do another one of these if I get more recommendations. So that's me fishing for engagement there. Yeah, I will hopefully see you guys when I'm streaming on Metallurgy with all the folks there, and pick up my tape, buy the tape, like and subscribe, and probably a new music video coming soon for the other song on that EP release. So I hope you all enjoy it. I'll see you later. Bye. Bye.